I think I'd want to commend and exhort those who are listening who are 70 and a half and older. That group of people, there's no group of people in Christendom that care more about the fulfillment of the Great Commission. There's none that have been more committed and more faithful over their lifetimes. That generation has grown up and lived out the mission that Bill Bright gave his life to, which is, let's see Jesus' name proclaimed to every nation in this generation. And for God to bring this timing about so that generation has access to a wonderful charitable giving tool like this is just amazing.
If you either currently have an IRA or will have an IRA, you have access to one of the most powerful giving tools in the U.S. A qualified charitable distribution is a gift from your traditional IRA directly to charity. Today, Eric and I are talking about qualified charitable distributions, or QCDs, and why they have the potential to single-handedly fund the Great Commission. Welcome back to the Smarter Generosity Podcast. I'm Katie Brubaker.
And I'm Eric Fleshood.
And today, we are excited to share a conversation that Eric and I have been having over the last 2 weeks. In fact, we're so excited to talk about this that we changed what we're going to talk about on this podcast last minute because we want to have this conversation with you. So today, we're going to be talking about QCDs. That stands for Qualified Charitable Distributions, and it's having a huge impact on kingdom generosity right now. Okay, well, I was going to ask you, let's start at the beginning with what a QCD is and the people that it touches. I would say if you have an IRA, if you have a retirement account, if you know somebody who has an IRA or a retirement account, this is for you. This is something to pay attention to. So, Eric, what is a QCD and how does it relate to an IRA?
Well, the QCD touches on what, for most people, is going to be the largest asset they own in their lifetime. It's going to grow, and that's your individual retirement account. So a qualified charitable distribution, or QCD, is when part of that IRA goes directly from the IRA account to charity and bypasses you, the IRA owner, doesn't come into your possession, doesn't come into your bank account, but goes straight from the account directly over to charity. So it's a qualified charitable distribution.
Now, one thing that's important here is that right now it can only come out of a traditional IRA. So because it skips you as the giver, you're not paying tax on it. So typically you would take that out of your IRA, you pay on it, and then you're able to give and you get that tax deduction for it. But QCD skips you, goes straight to the charity, right? So it wouldn't make sense to give from a Roth IRA. This is only, so as you think about this is only in terms of a traditional IRA.
That's right.
At this point.
And it's those who are 70 and a half or older are eligible to make this qualified charitable distribution. And it's particularly helpful for those who are 73 and older, because at age 73 is when retirees are forced by Uncle Sam to make distributions, to take withdrawals from those IRA accounts. And those withdrawals are taxable. It's a smart saving vehicle for retirement because you defer the taxes all along the way. But then once you make the withdrawals, then those deferred tax payments come due. But the qualified charitable distribution is a beautiful way to repurpose those forced withdrawals that generous people have. And so what retirees are finding is that this is a superior, far superior way to handle their giving to church, to charity, to ministry, than even what they were doing pre-retirement.
Now, those forced withdrawals, so that's the RMD, right? That's the required minimum distribution that happens at 73. I've had some people say this sounds too good to be true. And they said, are you sure this is legal? I mean, just a handful of years ago, we had people ask us that. Are you sure this is legal? Yes,
Well,
absolutely.
yes, yes. Not only is it legal, but Congress is looking at ways at accelerating it. It is so popular. It's making such a huge impact in the charitable space.
Hmm.
Crew is seeing such huge benefit from this. And Congress is taking notice and saying, why are we limiting this benefit just to these individual retirement accounts? Let's look at expanding this benefit to those who have other types of retirement accounts, and
Hmm.
that would be fantastic. But even just with the IRA, Katie, we're talking about $20 trillion in IRA accounts in the United States, and fully half of that, a 10 trillion with a T, is in control of those who are 70 and a half or older. So when I look at those numbers and I think about the fulfillment of the Great Commission, I think those of you who are 70 and a half and older, you have a superpower.
You could do
I
this. We
you
could do it. We
you
could fulfill the Great Commission at 70 and a half and older in the US financially from traditional IRAs. Is this what you're
abs
suggesting?
absolutely I am. I
Let's do
mean,
it.
if you put friends of ours like Jim Wise have surveyed the Christian landscape for how much would it cost to fulfill all the existing
Mm,
plans that all the mission groups and all the ministries have
right.
to just go gangbusters with their mission. And $10 trillion, Katie, uh, you would only need a fraction of that to
Hmm.
fund every single one of those plans to the max. That's how much money we're talking. I mean, it's hard to get your mind wrapped around that number.
Okay. Well, say
So,
somebody's listening to this and they say, great, I'm in. Let's do it, Eric. Are there limits to this? Can they give everything that's in their traditional IRA using a QCD right now? Walk us through
yeah,
the rules here.
right. Well, there is a maximum per year per IRA account holder, and that's $111,000 in 2026. The good news is that Congress has already indexed that to increase roughly according to an inflation numbers every year
Mhm.
from now on. But this year you can do up to 111,000, so that's 222,000
Per
for a
couple.
married couple if they
Mm-hmm.
each
Because
have an
it's per
IRA account.
IRA, right? So it's
It's
per.
per IRA, it's per taxpayer.
Okay.
So you might have more than one IRA account, right, as a taxpayer, but total you would still be limited to 111,000 for the year for you, and then
Mm-hmm.
another 111,000 for your spouse. Um, and that does not count, not even one penny of it counts toward your taxable income. Um, Now, another thing that might be considered a limitation is that it doesn't generate a tax deduction. This is a point that some people get confused about. So
Mm-hmm.
what is the tax benefit if it doesn't create a tax deduction? Now, remember, the idea here is that it's bypassing you and going straight from your IRA custodian to the charity.
So it's
So
not income to me. I don't need to take it as income first.
you don't take it as
So I'm
income, therefore you will pay no tax on it. That's the tax
right.
benefit. But it
Yep.
does not also create a tax deduction. So that's one feature of it that people need to keep in mind. This is repeatable though, year after year for people,
Mm-hmm.
and it will meet 100% of it can be applied toward your required minimum distribution. Now, you asked about limitations. People need to remember it matters in what order you do things. So
What do you
let's
mean?
say in the month of January, you take a normal taxable distribution from your IRA, and then later in the year you decide you want to do a qualified charitable distribution. The first withdrawal meets your RMD first. It has to be applied to your RMD first. And then the QCD. So it matters what order you do it in. So if you want
So
to
if you want this to apply to your RMD, then you need to be thinking about this from the get-go you don't want to wait until December, because by then you might have already, it may not count towards your RMD
yeah, you
necessarily.
just want to think through, do I need the income this year? There's many
Right.
people who don't need the income that they're forced to take from their IRA. So they just decide, well, I'm going to give that through the QCD and I won't be taxed on it.
Mhm.
Then there's other people that are like, well, I need about half of it, and then the other half that I'm forced to take, I'll give away.
Mhm.
So we just want to make the point that though that it matters the order that you do things in terms of that. However, Katie, the most popular time of the year we see at Crew for doing this is in the fourth quarter of the year, because people are
Mhm.
thinking about their tax year, December 31st coming up. That's when people start, doing the calculations. And so there is a peak period, let's say in the fourth quarter, where people are doing this. But Katie, I'm looking at the numbers coming in to Crew, and the number of people that are doing this is literally growing exponentially, because we're
Mhm.
counting in our partner roles how many people are doing this, and the curve is crazy. So this thing is growing, and it's no wonder. Once you realize the huge benefit here, people
Right.
are saying, sign me up, I want to do this also. And it looks like the growth curve, there's no end in sight on this. What it looks like to us at Crew is that this is such a wonderful feature and benefit of being an IRA account holder in the retirement phase. People are signing up in droves to do this.
Mhm.
And there's really no wonder that they're signing up so fast to do it. The benefits are huge, and one benefit we haven't mentioned, Katie, is that there are some people are in situations where if they add to their taxable income, it's going to kick them into a higher tax bracket. It's
Right.
going to affect their Medicaid or
Mhm.
Medicare, I'm sorry,
Mhm.
because Medicare, the premium you pay is in part based on your taxable income that you report. So if you could keep that taxable income down, not only do you avoid paying tax on that income, but you can save on some of these other things that are based on taxable income.
Absolutely. And I think too, part of why we're seeing it come into Crew um, a little bit more than what it has in the past, actually a lot more than what it has in the past. And people are using this because when they issue a qualified charitable distribution, it doesn't necessarily have to go to just one place. So the mechanics of how it works is that you are getting a hold of whoever holds your IRA, so your IRA custodian, and you're saying, I want to do this QCD, and then you're telling them where it's going to go. And you can list multiple charities. And within Crew, you could say, I want it to go to this ministry for this project, and also these staff members that we support. And so we have seen, I mean, so not only Crew ministries, but we've seen a lot of QCDs be used to support staff as well. And so I think we're just starting to see it spread across the ministry as people are understanding the advantages to
Yes.
giving, because like you
It's
said, not only on the tax side of things, but also a lot of people are saying, I actually don't want that extra income right now. I don't,
yes.
when the RMD kicks in at 73, that's going to do, a couple of things that isn't to their advantage. So they're trying to figure out, all right, so $111,000, where can I put this? And that becomes their giving bucket. I mean, that becomes where a lot of people at
Yes, that's
70 and a
right.
half can start giving out of their traditional IRA.
That's right. Hi, friends. Pardon the interruption. I just wanted to jump in here and clarify something. When we speak of supporting Crew staff with QCDs, we're speaking of charitable donations to Crew, which Crew uses to support the work of missionaries. We don't mean to suggest that QCDs or IRA money is being funneled to Crew staff for their personal use. Thanks for letting me clarify. Now back to the program. Right. My wife and I, we're 55, so we're a little ways off from this, but we're already planning to use our traditional IRA accounts for giving when we reach
Mhm.
that age. So right now, when we decide whether this year is it better to give to a Roth IRA or is it better to give to a traditional IRA, we're thinking about that future when we're making
Mm-hmm.
that determination on this year's taxes. Um, uh, there's one other. I wanted to mention, Katie. It really is having a transformative effect on the missionary staff of Cru, who are
Mm.
seeing many of their donors are going into retirement thinking, okay, I'm about to have a fixed income. I'm not going to be pulling in the salary that I used to pull in, and I'm going to have to
Mhm.
start making some cuts. And unfortunately, that may mean I need to cut back on the support that I give to my missionaries. And it is so wonderful to hear the stories of our staff who are educating their support teams about this, because they're seeing one after another these retirees realize with the QCD, I don't have to cut back on my giving.
Right.
I'm saving on the taxes. That's more money I have available. And this retirement account, I didn't know it was this donation relevant, that I could
Mm-hmm.
give it this way. And so not only are they maintaining their support, our staff are seeing support increase once
Right.
people realize this QCD.
Well, and I think once people realize this too, I think generous people are educating other generous people. And it's a
Right.
conversation in this demographic. And I mean, when I learned about this, I immediately called my parents and I said, "Do you give this way?" And my dad said, "Absolutely, we do," which is fantastic. We had never had that conversation before. And so I think word's spreading throughout families and peers and donors who want other people to know about this. Now, I want to go back to something you said, Eric, because you were talking about how you and your wife are planning retirement. You're putting money into this retirement bucket to be able to give it specifically in the future. And one thing to be thinking about too is what happens. So what happens if I do inherit my parents' IRA? I know there are certain assets that are better to be inherited than others. So
Right.
where does this land if I were to inherit my parents' traditional IRA? How does that puzzle
Yes.
piece fit?
Yes. Our audience is smart, and they probably realize with some of the recent, you know, over the last for about 10 years now, we're at the place where 95% of families are not going to owe estate taxes. Their estates are not going to be large enough.
Mhm.
The exclusion on that is so high now,
Mhm.
and that remains true. And so many families are out there thinking, okay, we don't have to worry about estate taxes. However, there's a dirty little tax that people are forgetting, and many are not aware of. And this dirty little tax is called the income in respect of a decedent, and it applies to traditional IRA accounts that are left for heirs. You see, Uncle Sam all along has planned that every dollar that's taken out of those retirement accounts is going to be taxed for income taxes, whether it's you or whether it's the person you leave it to. So many people are not aware that their children are going to be saddled with the taxes on those IRA withdrawals from the estate. Now, think about the fact that that IRA account for most people, for the vast majority of Americans, that IRA account is going to be the largest asset in their estate, and the largest asset in their estate is subject to this backdoor tax. So what we're seeing in the conversations with partners at Cru is when they realize, hey, maybe the IRA isn't the right asset to leave to family. There's other assets that are more tax smart to leave to family. And the IRA, that's the tax smart one that I should be leaving to charity, because charity is not going to pay tax when they receive it.
Mhm. Well, Eric, believe it or not, we've already hit about our time limit talking about QCDs. So I want to start to wrap up the conversation, but I want to make sure, is there anything else that we need to mention or talk about
Yes.
when it comes to, oh, What is it?
Yes,
What have
there
I
is.
forgotten to ask you?
There's an important limitation that we haven't touched on, and that is for those who are familiar with donor advised funds,
Mm.
the QCD is not right now allowed to be put into a donor advised fund. That
Mhm.
is a limitation that Congress has put on it. And the thinking is they want these IRA dollars to go to frontline use as fast and as quickly as possible. The QCD has its origins going back to 2004 with the hurricane in New Orleans.
Mm.
Remind me the name of it.
Katrina,
It's escaping
Hurricane
Katrina,
Katrina.
Hurricane Katrina,
Hmm.
when there was critical aid needed now, and so Congress opened up the possibility of people using their IRA accounts to help with Hurricane Katrina. And so that kind of right now frontline mentality use has stuck with us all these years. But even with that limitation, Katie, as you said earlier, it still represents a huge opportunity for people to support not just Crew, but their church, other
Hmm.
ministries, other nonprofits can benefit from this. So it really is playing an increasingly important place in people's giving strategies.
And even though I said it's time to wrap up, I thought of one more thing as well. Okay, so say somebody says, Eric, I hear the 111,000 limit. I want to be able to give more than that this year. Can I give more? And what happens from a tax standpoint if I give above the 111,000?
Right. Yeah, that's a really important point because it would be we'd be creating a false impression if we said the 111,000 is the most that anybody could give from their IRA in a year. Absolutely
Right.
not true. It's also not true that you have to be 70 and a half before you give from your IRA. You can be much younger than that and give from your IRA. But the tax treatment is different. You take it as a normal withdrawal and then you donate it. So you have an offsetting tax deduction for the amount that you withdraw and give and then pass on to charity.
And you
And
can do
that's
that without penalties starting at 59 and a half, right? I
that's right.
believe.
There's no early withdrawal penalties beginning at 59 and a half. So that opens up a whole lot of other opportunities, and we see people doing that as well. So I'm glad you brought that up, that 111,000 is not a ceiling, only when it comes to meeting your RMD requirement. It is not a ceiling in terms of how much you could give from your IRA in a particular year.
Okay. So if I gave over the 111,000, what happens to the rest?
Yeah, anything over the 111,000 you would take as a normal distribution to yourself, which means it's taxable. And if you want to make a charitable contribution with it, you absolutely can. And so then you'd have a potentially a tax deduction for that part over 111,000.
And that portion could go into a donor advised fund.
That's right. That's right, because it's not a QCD. The
That's right.
portion over 111,000 is a normal distribution, and you could direct that to a donor advised fund. Absolutely right.
And I think that because there's so much flexibility in being able to give from your IRA, this is why it's an area that is just exploding right now. I think it's why it's a conversation that we've been having so much around our office. And I know across just generous families across the US right now, it's a conversation. So that's why I wanted to bring it up today, because people can turn retirement resources into generosity and have that kingdom impact.
That's right.
All right, Eric, you always
And
get the last word. So I'm going to say, is there anything that you want to end on before we wrap up the conversation?
well, I think I'd want to commend and exhort those who are listening who are 70 and a half and older.
Mm.
That group of people, there's no group of people in Christendom that care more about the fulfillment of the Great Commission. There's none that have been more committed and more faithful over their lifetimes. That generation has grown up and lived out the mission that Bill Bright gave his life to, which is let's see Jesus' name proclaimed to every nation in this generation. And for God to bring this timing about so that that generation has access to a wonderful charitable giving tool like this is just amazing.
Yes. Yes.
And I think what's shaping up, Tom Brokaw, trademarked the Greatest Generation moniker for those who fought in World War II. But I really see this 70 and a half generation being a lot like that in terms of kingdom causes and shaping up to be one of the greatest generations that Christendom has ever seen in terms of commitment and steadfastness on this. So I'm really happy for them and what's available to them in the giving world.
I love that. I think that's a great spot to end. Thank you, Eric, for having this conversation with me and so that we could jump in and share our excitement over what's going on with Kingdom Impact through traditional IRAs. All right.
It's been my pleasure, Katie. Good talking with you.
You too. We'll see you next time.
See you next time. Bye.
Bye.
I said earlier that if you are 70 and a half or older, you have a bit of a superpower, and I really mean that. Many of you listening have spent decades praying, giving, sending missionaries, and caring deeply about seeing the gospel reach every nation. And now, at this stage of life, you may have resources sitting in a traditional IRA that can become another way to fuel that mission. That's what excites me about the QCD. It's bigger than a tax benefit. It gives generous people another way to take something God has entrusted to them and put it to work for the kingdom. If you have a traditional IRA and want to understand this opportunity better, go to crewfoundation.org/IRA-rollover. And if you'd rather talk it through with someone, reach out to one of our Crew Foundation specialists. We'd be glad to help you understand the options, ask good questions, and think through what faithful stewardship could look like in your situation.
The Smarter Generosity podcast is for spiritual edification and educational purposes only. It is not intended to be legal or tax advice. Consult your professional advisor prior to making your gift.